from some of our Republican friends, again the assertion of how strong this economy is doing and how we have got to continue going along this same path with an OMB director who is supportive of these policies. Let me reiterate, I do not believe the economy is strong when over the last 6 years, 5 million more children have become, 5 million more Americans have become poor, slipped into poverty, including 1 million children. I do not believe that this economy is strong when median income for working-age families has declined by about $2,400 since the year 2000. I do not believe that this economy is strong when the personal savings rate has been below zero for 8 consecutive quarters. I do not believe this economy is strong when 8.6 million Americans have lost their health insurance since President Bush has been in office. I do not believe this economy is strong when 35 million Americans in our country struggled to put food on the table last year, and hunger in America is growing. I do not believe this economy is strong when home foreclosures are now the highest on record, turning the American dream of home ownership into a nightmare. We need a new direction in economic policy, policies which protect the interests of ordinary Americans and not just the wealthy and the powerful. We need an OMB director to tell this president the reality of economic life for tens of millions of our families, rather than continue this mythology which essentially represents the interest of the people on top, who in fact are doing very well. But I think maybe government should represent all rather than just the wealthy and the powerful. Mr. President, when I talked before about the budget priorities of President Bush, I think we should continue that discussion and talk about how he treats our veterans. The war in Iraq, something which I strongly opposed, has given us now over 27,000 soldiers who have been wounded, many of them seriously. Studies tell us that many of the soldiers returning home from Iraq are coming home with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And how did the president's budget, a budget, by the way, which we turned around, but how did his initial budget treat the veterans? His budget proposed cutting the VA by $3.4 billion over 5 years after adjusting for inflation. That does not say thank you to our veterans and their families and all that they have gone through. Mr. President, we have a president who in his budget has said that we don't have enough money in this country to address the needs of the middle class, working families, senior citizens, children, and veterans. We have said that we just don't have enough money to do that, to pay attention to the people who are hurting. But amazingly enough, Mr. President, President Bush has told us that we do have enough money to provide $739 billion in tax breaks over the next decade to households with incomes exceeding $1 million per year. Under President Bush's proposal, the average tax break for this group of millionaires would total $162,000 by the year 2012. So if you are a millionaire or a billionaire, hey, the good news is we have enough money for you. But if you're a veteran coming home with PTSD from Iraq, if you're a mother trying to find quality child care for your kids, if you're a worker trying to find health insurance, sorry, this country does not have enough money for you. So let me be very blunt and say that in my view, it is wrong to be giving huge tax breaks to the very wealthiest people in this country, the people who need them the least, while cutting back on the needs of the middle class and working families of our country. And I should say that Mr. Nussle's record as chairman of the Budget Committee tells us very clearly that he supports these tax breaks for the very rich, while at the same time he has been prepared over the years to cut programs for those who need them the most. And that is wrong, and that is why I will be voting against Mr. Nussle's confirmation. Mr. President, included in the President Bush's budget, as you know, is the complete repeal of the estate tax, which would take effect at the end of 2010. The complete repeal of the estate tax, we should be very, very clear, because sometimes people have not been quite so clear about it, that this repeal would benefit the wealthiest 0.3% of our population. Top 0.3%. 99.7% of the American people would not benefit, their families would not benefit by 1 nickel from the repeal of the estate tax. Obviously, if you're in the top 0.3%, you are already a millionaire or a billionaire, and you are already in a family which is doing very, very well and has been doing well in recent years. In other words, 99.7% of Americans would not receive 1 nickel. The wealthiest people who are doing very well would get all of the benefits. According to the President's budget, this repeal of the estate tax would reduce receipts for the Treasury by more than $91 billion over the next 5 years and more than $442 billion over the next decade. But the long-term damage to our fiscal solvency is even worse. According to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, repealing the estate tax would cost over $1 trillion from 2012 to 2021, over $1 trillion. All of whose benefits go to the wealthiest 0.3%. In other words, if the President's plan to permanently repeal the estate tax succeeds, the children and family members of the most privileged families in America will reap a massive tax break. Paris Hilton, you are in luck if the President gets his way. You're going to do very, very well. But for other Americans, the deficit will go up, and the argument will be raised that we don't have enough money to take care of our kids, our seniors, and our veterans. And what has Mr. Nussle's position been as chairman of the Budget Committee on the repeal of the estate tax? He is there alongside of the President. So we have every reason to believe that he will be recommending to the President that we continue this extremely unfair and disastrous policy. Mr. President, when we talk about repealing the estate tax, which the President wants to do, Mr. Nussle wants to do, which many of our Republicans friends want to do, I think we should see who benefits in a more specific sense. Yes, it is the wealthiest 0.3% who will get all of the benefits. People need it the least. Let's look at one particular family who does the very best. Let's put this thing into perspective. And the reality is that the big winner, the people who really need this money the most, not the kids, not our seniors, not low-income people, not our veterans, no, they get at the end of the line. The people who receive the benefits, significant amounts of the benefits from the repeal of the estate tax, is the Walton family that owns Walmarts. In fact, today, and these things change, they go up and down, but the estimated net worth of the Sam Walton family is about $83.2 billion. From where I come from, that's pretty good. $83.2 billion. You're a family that's doing just fine. You'll probably be able to pay the rent next month. If the estate tax is repealed for this one family, they will receive a benefit of $32.7 billion. One family, $32.7 billion. We don't have enough money, says the President, to increase health insurance for our children. Oh, he's going to repeal that. $35 billion to take care of 3 million more kids. We can't afford that. But we can afford to give $32 billion in tax breaks to a family worth $83 billion. Those priorities are wrong. in my view, they are immoral. And we need an OMB director who begins to explain to the American people that this is not what America is about, who begins to explain to the American people that we need a budget that reflects the needs and deals with the needs of millions of families where people are working longer hours for lower wages, that deals with the problems of our senior citizens, deals with the problems of our crumbling infrastructure, deals with the problems of kids who can't afford to go to college, deals with all of the problems that our people face every single day. That's the kind of budget we need. That's the kind of OMB director we need. And what we don't need are policies which give obscene benefits to the very wealthiest people in this country. So let me just simply say at this point that, in fact, what this debate is about is whether or not we're going to have an OMB director who can advise the president about the reality facing our working families, or we continue the same failed policies. And having said that, I would reserve the balance of my time.